All right, today we're going to talk about vertex form, and I want to start by talking about what we've recently done. So what we're in the middle of right now, we're talking about equations of parabolas, and we've seen two of them so far. This is what we called standard form, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, and basically it's all the terms just listed out. You have your x squared part first, then your x part, then your constant part. Now this is what we just did last section, last day of notes. It's factored form because it's factored. You got two different factors in there. And the shortcut for graphing is the factors give you your x-intercepts. Well, here is our third one. This is called vertex form. It's y equals a times, and then you have a factor squared. So we're going to call it x minus h squared. And then there's an extra number, plus k. Now the reason it's called vertex form is because you can get the vertex very easily just by looking at it basically. So the vertex it's a point. The first part comes from this number right here, the h, and the second part comes from this number right here, the k. Now one of the things I've mentioned to you guys already this year, when you're looking at a formula, if a variable has a minus instead of a plus, that's actually telling you to change the sign when you use that number. So you notice it's minus h, but it's plus k. And that means when you're picking out the numbers, you have to remember you're changing the sign on the h, the first one, but not the k. You leave that one. So make sure you remember that. That's very important. The first number, whatever it is, change it. If it's positive, make it negative. If it's negative, make it positive. The second number, the k, don't change it, just leave it. All right, so let's do a very quick and should be pretty easy example. We want to know what the vertex of this is. And it's in vertex form. You can tell because it has that squared factor, that x plus 3 squared. So to find the vertex, I'm not going to do any work at all. I'm basically just going to look at the problem and answer the question. Now from the problem, this number is going to go here. Although I am going to change the sign, and I'll get to that in a second. And this number is going to go here. You basically just take those two numbers, and those are going to be the answer to your question. But like I said, the important part is you have to remember you change the sign on the first one, not the second one. So because that was an x plus 3, I'm going to change the sign and put negative 3. But for the second one, the negative 4, I am not going to change the sign. I'm going to leave it a negative 4. And that's the answer to the question. So the vertex of this parabola is negative 3, negative 4. All right, now, in just a minute, we're going to finish that example. We're going to take the same equation and finish the graph of it. But before we do that, I want to talk about this number right here, a. Now that is the same a that we talked about for both standard form and factored form. It's the number out front, or the number in front of the x squared. And it actually tells you two different things. We focused on one of them last section, last day of notes, or last video. And that's whether it's positive or negative. So if you're looking at that number in front, that a, any positive number means you get that U-shaped parabola opening up. And any negative number, you get the upside down U shape, where it's opening down. Now, we're going to take it one step further than that, because A actually tells you one other thing. It gives you the shape of the parabola. So basically, your parabola can be very wide or very skinny, depending on the number. The bigger the number is, the skinnier the parabola gets. The smaller the number is, the wider it gets. So basically, if A was like 10, or some pretty big number, you would have this very, very skinny parabola like this. Now, if a is a very small number, like less than 1, probably a fraction or a decimal, if a is 1/2 or 0.1, then you're going to get this very wide opening parabola like this. Now, with just those two pieces of information, if you know how to find the vertex and you know what to do with a, you can very quickly and easily do examples like this. So this is what I was saying a second ago. This is the same equation we just found the vertex of. And the vertex is And remember, even if we hadn't just done this a second ago, you can tell what the vertex is just by looking here and changing the number on the first one. So it's -3, -4. Again, the same question we just did, but it wouldn't have been hard even if we hadn't done it. So the vertex is a point. Let's plot that point first. -3, -4 means left 3, down 4. It would be this point right here. That's the vertex. So the only other thing we need to finish this graph is this number right here, A. And A tells us two things. The most important thing, that's a negative number, so this parabola from that vertex is going down. It's opening down. But then I say, well, it's a 2. It's not a -1, it's a -2. And as the number gets bigger, it gets a little skinnier. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, this is a sketch, not a graph. It doesn't have to be perfect. But what I would do is from that vertex, draw kind of a skinny parabola opening down. And that's your answer. That's our sketch. So 2 steps. I changed colors to make it stand out. In green, I figured out what the vertex is, and I plotted that point. And then in purple, I looked at A, and I knew what it's telling me. It's telling me that it opens down, and that it's a little bit skinnier than normal. And there's my answer. Now, here's a couple hints for you guys for the worksheet today. H and K can both be 0, and if they are 0, you're not going to see the 0. It's just going to disappear because the 0 is basically nothing. So for example, x is the same as x plus 0. That means if h was 0, it would look like this. Y equals x squared minus 5. You look at that and you go, oh, that's not vertex form. It's supposed to have parentheses. It's supposed to be x plus something squared. Well, it is vertex form, and h is 0, because that is like having, even though you wouldn't see it this way, it's like me saying y equals x plus 0 squared minus 5. That's the same thing. So that's vertex form, and the vertex would be 0, -5. And that's basically what I just wrote right there. So our vertex for that one, it is vertex form, and that would be 0, -5. And this one is also vertex form, even though it kind of doesn't look like it. You see the x plus 2 squared, and you're like, isn't it supposed to be a plus something on the end or a minus something on the end? Well, k is actually 0 in this one. So when I say y equals x plus 2 squared and just stop, you can think of it as y equals x plus 2 squared plus 0. And then the vertex would be -2, 0, because you would change the sign on the 2 and get -2. Leave the 0, -2, 0. So those are some tricky ones that don't look like vertex form, but they are. But other than that, today's worksheet should be very straightforward. It's going to be you guys sketching some graphs using the vertex form to find the vertex, and using what you know about A to draw it opening up or down, and maybe a little bit wider or skinnier.